The alarm rang before dawn, in Megan Sanders's small apartment in Stone Mountain, Georgia. She opened her eyes and stared at the ceiling for a moment, wishing she could stay under the blanket. Then she heard her mother coughing in the next room, and remembered why sleeping longer was a luxury she could not afford. At 28, Megan was raising her 8-year-old daughter, Sophie, while caring for her 58-year-old mother, Carol. Carol's diabetes and high blood pressure had worsened during the past year, and the prescriptions took a painful share of Megan's paycheck. "Are you going already?" Sophie asked sleepily. "I'll be back tonight. Help Grandma if she needs anything." Megan kissed her daughter, put on the navy uniform of the cleaning company, and left. Getting to Midtown Atlanta required a bus, a MARTA train, and a long walk. Megan used the ride to practice English grammar and basic business lessons on her phone. She had finished high school, but never attended college. She still believed there had to be something beyond cleaning offices for the rest of her life. The tower where she worked belonged partly to Russell Development, one of Georgia's largest construction companies. Megan cleaned the executive floors, where people hurried past her without learning her name. That Tuesday morning, the atmosphere was different. Several lawyers had gathered outside a conference room. Through the half-open door, Megan heard raised voices. "The deadline is real, Ryan. Your grandfather gave you 3 months." Then the door opened. Ryan Russell walked out. Megan knew who he was. Everyone did. He was 35, wealthy, unmarried, and the subject of countless business articles and society photographs. Yet the man standing before her did not look powerful. He looked trapped. 3 months, he muttered. "Where am I supposed to find a wife in 3 months?" Megan lowered her eyes and continued wiping a table. Then Ryan stopped. "You." She turned. "What's your name?" "Megan, sir." "How long have you worked here?" "Almost 2 years." He studied her. "Are you married?" Megan frowned. "No. I'm a single mother." Something changed in his expression. "I need a wife," he said. "Would you marry me?" Megan nearly dropped the cloth. "Excuse me? I know how insane that sounds." "Then maybe you shouldn't have said it." For the first time, Ryan almost smiled. He asked for a few minutes to explain. Against her better judgment, Megan followed him into an empty meeting room. His grandfather had left controlling ownership of Russell Development to him with an unusual condition. Before his next birthday, Ryan had to marry and remain married for at least 2 years. Otherwise, control would pass to his cousin Mason. "My grandfather thought marriage would force me to understand responsibility beyond myself," Ryan said. "And you waited until 3 months before the deadline. I thought the clause was ridiculous." Megan folded her arms. "Why not marry one of the women you date?" His expression darkened. One former girlfriend had sold private information about him. Another had secretly recorded conversations to pressure him. A third had been seeing Mason while dating Ryan. "So you decided a cleaner would be safer?" Ryan winced. "That came out badly." "It certainly did. I mean, you have no reason to pretend you care about me. Cleaning your floors doesn't make me stupid, Mr. Russell. I know exactly who you are." Ryan looked embarrassed. "You're right. I'm sorry." Then he made the offer. He would pay Megan $400,000 for a marriage lasting 2 years. $100,000 would be paid after the wedding, with the remainder at the end. They could maintain separate private lives while appearing married when necessary. Megan stared at him. $400,000. It was enough to secure Sophie's education, pay Carol's medical bills, and give Megan the chance to study. Then Ryan mentioned that Human Resources had confirmed she had a daughter and an ill mother. Megan stood immediately. "You investigated me while we were talking?" "I asked for basic information. I needed to know whether this could work." "You don't know anything about me." "No," Ryan admitted, "but I'd like the opportunity to." She reached the door. "I need 3 days." Ryan nodded. 3 days. On the train home, Megan could think of nothing else. That night, Carol admitted she had skipped one medication because they could not afford the refill yet. Sophie ate boxed noodles at the kitchen table and cheerfully talked about an art project at school. Megan watched them both and felt the impossible offer pressing against everything she feared and everything she loved. $400,000 could change their lives, but she wondered what it might cost that no contract could ever calculate. Megan told only Jessica, her closest friend since high school. "You're considering marrying a man you barely know?" Jessica asked over the phone. "For 2 years. That does not improve the sentence." Megan almost laughed, but she was too tired. She explained the contract, the inheritance, and the money. Jessica became quiet. "I understand why you're tempted. I also know you. You don't make decisions just because there's money on the table. My mother needs treatment. Sophie deserves opportunities. And you deserve to know what you're walking into." The next day at work, Megan avoided Ryan. The following afternoon, however, they met near the elevators. "Have you decided?" he asked. "Not yet." He suggested dinner. Megan refused. "I'm not going somewhere that charges more for one meal than I spend on groceries." Ryan seemed surprised. "Your choice, then." They met after work at a modest cafe near a MARTA station. Ryan arrived wearing jeans and an ordinary white shirt, although nothing about him looked ordinary among commuters drinking coffee from paper cups. Megan had already investigated him through Jessica, who once worked for a company doing subcontracting for Russell Development. "You have a reputation for paying contractors fairly," Megan said. "I'm relieved that's what she told you." "She also told me about Paige." Ryan sighed. Paige Parker, the daughter of a competing developer, had secretly passed confidential business information to her father while dating him. "That was the relationship that finally taught me distrust can become a habit," Ryan said. Megan understood the sentence better than she wanted to. "Show me the agreement." Ryan produced a preliminary contract. The language was complicated, but the important parts were clear. A legally valid marriage, 2 years, confidentiality. No romantic relationships with other people during that period. Public appearances when required. $100,000 shortly after the ceremony, and $300,000 when the agreement ended. And Sophie? You decide what is best for her. She's observant. I can't tell her I suddenly married a stranger and expect her not to ask questions. Then I should meet her. Megan looked at him carefully. And my mother. Her too. Why me, Ryan? He thought before answering. Because when I made that ridiculous proposal, you looked offended before you looked interested. Most people around me calculate what they can gain before they speak. You told me I was being insulting. That isn't much of a qualification for marriage. It's more honesty than I've found in years. Megan asked for one more day. She might have continued hesitating if Carol had not become ill that night. Her blood pressure rose dangerously, and Megan called an ambulance. At the hospital, they waited for hours beneath bright fluorescent lights, while Sophie slept against her shoulder. The physician was kind but exhausted. Carol needed consistent medication and regular care from a specialist. Megan already knew what that meant. More appointments, more bills, more choices between medicine, rent, electricity, and food. On the bus home, Sophie asked, "Why don't we just buy Grandma the better medicine?" Megan looked out the window so her daughter would not see her face. Sometimes grown-ups need a little time to figure things out. That afternoon, she called Ryan. "Come to my apartment tomorrow." "Does that mean you're accepting?" "It means I want you to meet my family before I decide." He arrived carrying flowers for Carol and an art set for Sophie. The apartment had worn furniture, water stains near one window, and barely enough space for the 3 women. Megan expected him to become uncomfortable. Instead, Ryan sat on the floor while Sophie showed him her drawings. He helped Megan prepare sandwiches. He listened to Carol talk about Atlanta from decades earlier. He did not check his phone every minute. He did not act as though poverty were contagious. Before he left, Sophie handed him a drawing. There was a house, a garden, Megan, Sophie, and a tall man holding hands. "That's us," Sophie explained. Ryan stared at the picture longer than necessary. "Can I keep this?" Sophie nodded proudly. At the door, Ryan quietly asked Megan for her decision. "I'll do it," she said, "but I have conditions. Half the money would be protected for Sophie's future. If the arrangement began harming Sophie emotionally, Megan could leave. Ryan would not transform Megan into a polished society wife. And before the wedding, she wanted to understand his family. Ryan accepted every condition. Then he held out his hand. "Partners?" Megan shook it. "Partners." Neither of them understood yet how difficult it would become to remember that word. Ryan arranged for Megan to meet Henry Harris, a family attorney in his 60s, who patiently explained every clause before allowing her to sign anything. Megan asked so many questions that Henry finally smiled. "Mr. Russell chose someone who reads before she signs. That already places you ahead of many executives I know." The civil ceremony was scheduled for 3 weeks later. Meanwhile, Megan learned why Ryan cared so fiercely about keeping Russell Development away from Mason. "It isn't only inheritance," Ryan told her. "Thousands of people depend on this company. My grandfather built it from almost nothing. Mason treats businesses like casinos. If he gains control, workers will pay for his mistakes." It was the first time Megan saw Ryan speak about the company without mentioning money. Responsibility mattered to him. A few days before the wedding, Sophie developed a severe viral infection. Megan spent the night beside her hospital bed. Ryan arrived the next morning with Robert Reed, a respected pediatrician. "You didn't have to do this," Megan said. "In a few days she'll officially be my stepdaughter. This is a contract. That doesn't mean she becomes a clause in it." Robert examined Sophie and adjusted her treatment. By the next evening, her fever had fallen. Something changed inside Megan. Ryan could have simply paid her and fulfilled the agreement. Instead, he remembered Carol's appointments. He checked on Sophie. He quietly solved problems without using them to demand gratitude. The morning of the wedding was cool and cloudy. Megan wore a simple dark blue dress she had bought herself. Sophie bounced around the apartment, asking whether Ryan would finally live with them. Not yet. But married people live together. Sometimes adults do things differently. Sophie frowned. That sounds like something adults say when they don't have a good answer. Carol laughed from across the room. At the courthouse, Ryan waited beside his longtime secretary, Claire Collins, and Henry. Jessica stood with Megan, while Carol and Sophie sat nearby. Ryan looked at Megan and forgot what he was about to say. "You look beautiful. You look acceptable." He laughed, and her nervousness eased. The ceremony was brief. They had planned everything, including a harmless kiss on the cheek afterward. Yet when the clerk declared them married, Ryan leaned closer, and Megan turned at the wrong moment. Their lips met. The kiss was brief, gentle, and entirely unplanned. Both pulled away in surprise. Sophie applauded. "Now you're really married." Everyone laughed except Megan, who could still feel the warmth of the moment. At lunch afterward, Ryan treated Sophie as though having a child interrupt every adult conversation was the most natural thing in the world. Later, as he drove them home, Sophie fell asleep against Carol. "It was a good day," Ryan said. Megan nodded. "About the kiss." "Accident," Ryan said quickly. "Right. Unless it bothered you." It didn't. Their eyes met. Neither added anything. During the weeks that followed, Megan left her cleaning job. Ryan encouraged her to study, rather than simply live on the contract payment. "You spent years surviving," he said. "Use this time to discover what you're capable of, when survival isn't taking all your energy." Sophie moved to a better school. Carol began seeing specialists regularly and improved steadily. Ryan visited several evenings each week. At first, he always had excuses, papers to sign, an update about Carol's physician, something for Sophie. Eventually, he stopped pretending he needed reasons. Then his mother returned from traveling. "My mother wants to meet you," Ryan said. Megan's stomach tightened. Helen Russell lived in an elegant older home in Buckhead. She was in her 60s, graceful, without being cold, and observant enough to make Megan feel transparent. During lunch, Helen asked how Megan and Ryan had met. "At work," Megan replied carefully. "How wonderfully unexpected." Megan and Ryan exchanged a glance. Later, Helen showed Megan family photographs, while Ryan played outside with Sophie. "My son became lonely after his father died," Helen said. "He learned to work instead of feeling things." Megan studied a photograph of a much younger Ryan. "He seems strong." "He is. Strong people can still be lonely." Then Helen touched Megan's hand. "I haven't seen him this relaxed in years." Guilt tightened Megan's chest. If Helen knew the truth, she might not be smiling. "I'm afraid I don't belong in his world," Megan admitted. Helen shook her head. "Marriage isn't about becoming worthy of someone's world. It's about creating a world where both people can remain themselves." Before Megan left, Helen embraced her. "Take care of my boy." On the drive home, Sophie quickly fell asleep. "Your mother likes me," Megan said. "She loves you." "You sound very sure," she asked when we were finding a home with a yard for Sophie. Megan laughed. Then Ryan became serious. "You are welcome in my family, Megan." She turned toward the window. The problem was no longer convincing everyone else that the marriage was real. The problem was that she was beginning to convince herself. About a month after the wedding, Ryan called early one morning. "I need my wife tonight." Megan nearly dropped her coffee. "You might want to phrase that differently." He laughed. "I have an important dinner with investors. They expect us to attend together." Megan immediately became anxious. "I don't know anything about business dinners. You know how to talk to people. I know how to clean conference rooms after business dinners. Just be yourself." That evening, Jessica helped Megan choose a simple black dress. "What if I embarrass him?" Jessica turned toward her. "You raised a child alone, cared for your mother, and worked before sunrise for years. Stop assuming rich people automatically have more substance because their tables have expensive forks." The dinner took place in an elegant restaurant overlooking downtown Atlanta. Ryan introduced Megan to Theodore Taylor and several members of his investment group. Their discussion centered on a large mixed-income housing development. At first, Megan listened quietly. Then Theodore mentioned that affordable housing projects often struggled to build lasting communities. Megan hesitated before speaking. "May I ask something?" The table grew quiet. "Of course," Theodore said. "Do your plans include childcare?" One architect answered that there would be recreational space. "I don't mean a playground. I mean actual childcare. A safe place where a parent working an early shift can leave a child. Maybe rooms for after-school programs and job training too." Theodore leaned forward. "Why those things specifically?" "Because when rent is low but transportation, childcare, and work are far apart, housing still isn't truly affordable. Families spend the savings somewhere else." Ryan stared at her. Megan continued, slowly gaining confidence. She talked about long commutes, grocery access, elderly relatives who could not climb stairs easily, mothers balancing unpredictable schedules, and children doing homework in crowded rooms. These were not theories she had studied. They were things she had lived. By dessert, Theodore was asking Megan questions directly. At the end of the evening, he turned to Ryan. "Your wife has a perspective your planning team could use." In the car, Ryan could barely contain his excitement. "He wants you as a community consultant." "I'm not qualified. You just changed the direction of a multi-million-dollar project during dinner. I don't have a degree. You have knowledge they don't." When they reached Megan's building, Ryan did not immediately unlock the doors. "Can I tell you something?" She waited. "I was proud to introduce you tonight." Megan smiled nervously. You're supposed to say that. I'm your wife. No. I was proud because you were the most genuine person at that table. His expression became serious. Megan, have you ever wondered whether something real might be growing inside this ridiculous arrangement? Her heartbeat quickened. She had wondered. Almost every day. Before she could answer, Ryan's phone rang. Claire reported an emergency at a construction site. Ryan apologized and drove away. The next morning, he appeared at Megan's apartment before she had properly dressed. We need to talk about what I said. Megan's hope rose despite every warning she had given herself. Ryan looked uncomfortable. I got carried away. I shouldn't have complicated our agreement. Her hope collapsed. Oh. I don't want you to feel pressured. Of course. Megan. You're right. It's business. She smiled politely enough to make him regret every word. For the next several days, Ryan kept his distance. Megan accepted Theodore's consulting offer. The work gave her confidence she had never experienced before. Engineers and planners listened when she spoke. She began studying community development at night. Then, after a meeting one afternoon, she heard shouting from Ryan's office. Mason was inside. You married a cleaner you barely knew, Mason said. You expect me to believe this isn't about grandfather's will? Megan is my wife. She's a paid opportunity. Megan froze outside the partly open door. Mason laughed. I'll prove the marriage is fake. The moment I do, control becomes mine. Ryan's voice remained cold. You can try. So admit it. This whole thing is a transaction. A pause followed. Then Ryan said, What matters is that the requirements are satisfied. Megan walked away before hearing anything else. Mason's insults hurt. Ryan's answer hurt more. That evening, Ryan found her outside her apartment. You've been avoiding my calls. I heard you and Mason. His face changed. Megan, you didn't hear everything. I heard enough. No. You apologized for suggesting we could be real. Then today, when your cousin called me a transaction, you defended the arrangement, not me. That's not what happened. Then tell me what happened. Ryan opened his mouth. Nothing came. Megan felt tears gathering. For one stupid moment, I thought maybe you felt what I was beginning to feel. His eyes widened. She stepped backward. But you were right the first time. This is business. She entered the building before he could stop her. Ryan remained on the sidewalk, finally understanding that he had protected his inheritance so carefully that he might have damaged something worth far more. 2 painful weeks followed. Ryan called almost every day, but Megan kept their conversations formal. Sophie noticed immediately. Why doesn't Ryan come anymore? He's busy, but he's your husband. Children, Megan discovered, had an exhausting talent for identifying contradictions adults preferred to ignore. Then Sophie became sick again. By the 3rd day, Megan was exhausted and worried. When the doorbell rang, she found Ryan standing beside Dr. Robert Reed. I heard Sophie had a fever. You didn't need to come. Yes, I did. Megan wanted to remain angry, but she moved aside. Robert examined Sophie, prescribed medication, and left. Ryan stayed. Megan, please hear what actually happened with Mason. She crossed her arms. He was trying to make me admit our marriage was fraudulent. Anything I said could have been used legally against us. So you called it a business requirement. It began that way. The words hurt, even though Megan knew they were true. Ryan stepped closer. But what I feel now didn't. She stared at him. I love Sophie. I care about Carol. I miss sitting in your kitchen while you complain that I load the dishwasher wrong. I miss Sophie showing me drawings I don't understand. I miss you arguing with me. Ryan, I fell in love with you. Megan shook her head. How can either of us trust feelings that grew from a lie? Because they're here whether I wanted them or not. Maybe you're confusing gratitude with love. Maybe you simply like having a family around. He looked hurt. I know the difference. I don't. Sophie appeared in the hallway wrapped in a blanket. "Why are you fighting?" "We aren't," Megan said. "You're using your fighting voices." Ryan knelt beside her. "How are you feeling?" "Better because you came." She took his hand. "Will you read to me?" Ryan glanced at Megan. After a moment, she nodded. While he read beside Sophie's bed, Carol joined Megan in the kitchen. "You're afraid," Carol said. "I have reasons." "Of course you do. What if I trust him and lose everything?" Carol looked toward Sophie's room. "You've spent years assuming fear protects you. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it only makes sure nothing new gets close enough to matter." Megan lowered her eyes. When Ryan emerged, Sophie was asleep. He found Megan on the balcony. "I know words aren't enough," he said. "They aren't." "Then let me prove it." "How?" Ryan inhaled slowly. "I'll cancel the contract." Megan turned sharply. "What?" "You keep everything already paid. Henry will release you from every obligation." "And your inheritance?" "I lose control of the company." "That's insane." "So was asking you to marry me in a hallway." "This isn't funny, Ryan. You could lose tens of millions of dollars and a company your grandfather spent his life building." "I can earn money again. You said thousands of employees depend on you." "I know. Then why would you risk them too?" "So, because I need you to understand that keeping you is not about the will." Megan stared at him. Ryan continued. "If the contract disappears, there's no payment waiting for you and no inheritance waiting for me. If I still come here tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that, maybe you'll finally believe I'm coming because I love you." Her eyes filled with tears. "You shouldn't have to destroy your future to prove something to me. I'm not destroying it. I'm choosing what matters. And what if I still say no? Then I'll respect it." He gently touched her forehead with his lips. "But I will never regret meeting you." Ryan left. For 3 days, Megan barely slept. Jessica thought the answer was obvious. "He's willing to lose the company for you." "That doesn't make it responsible." "No, but it makes it difficult to call his feelings convenient." Then Helen arrived unexpectedly. Ryan had told her everything. Megan wanted the floor to disappear beneath her. Instead, Helen asked one question. "Do you love my son?" Megan could no longer hide. "Yes." "Then what are you afraid of?" "That one day he'll realize he loved the idea of a family, not me." Helen smiled sadly. "I have known Ryan since the day he was born. I have never seen him surrender control for anyone. Yesterday he told me he would rather rebuild his career than keep a fortune by losing you." Megan's composure finally broke. Helen squeezed her hand. "Love does not arrive with proof stamped on it. Eventually, every person who loves has to decide whether uncertainty is a reason to walk away or a reason to become brave." After Helen left, Megan took out the cancellation papers Ryan had sent. She was still staring at them when Claire called. "Ryan signed everything yesterday." Megan stood. "What?" "He already instructed the attorneys to transfer control to Mason." Megan grabbed her coat. For the first time since the contract began, she knew exactly what she wanted. Megan rushed downtown and entered Russell Development without stopping at reception. Claire pointed toward the conference room. "He's in there with Mason and the attorneys." Megan opened the door. Ryan stood at one end of a long table. Mason sat opposite him, smiling with the satisfaction of a man who believed victory had finally arrived. "Megan?" Ryan stared at her. "What are you doing here?" "Stopping you from making the most expensive mistake of your life." Mason leaned back. "This should be interesting." Megan ignored him. "Where are the transfer papers?" Ryan approached her. "Megan, this isn't your responsibility. It became my responsibility when my husband decided to give away his company without talking to me." Mason laughed. "Your husband? I thought the marriage was only contractual." Megan turned toward him. "It was." The room fell silent. Mason's smile widened. I knew it. Our marriage began as an agreement, Megan continued. I married Ryan because my family desperately needed money. He married me because he desperately needed to satisfy his grandfather's condition. Megan, Ryan whispered. She took the cancellation agreement from her bag. But somewhere between the courthouse, hospital rooms, family dinners, homework, housing meetings, arguments, and all the ordinary moments nobody planned, the agreement stopped explaining why we stayed. She placed the papers on the table. I signed the cancellation. Ryan looked devastated. Then Megan tore her copy in half. Mason's smile vanished. I'm not ending the marriage, she said. I'm ending the reason it started. Ryan could barely speak. Megan, I love you. The words were frightening and freeing at once. I love you because you treated Sophie like family before anyone required you to. I love you because you respected my mother. I love you because when I finally discovered I had something useful to say, you didn't take credit for giving me a voice. You simply reminded me that I already had one. Ryan's eyes filled. You don't have to surrender Russell Development to prove anything. I already signed. Henry cleared his throat. Fortunately, transfer has not been completed. Mason stood angrily. The will required a legitimate marriage. Henry nodded. It required Ryan to marry and sustain a genuine family commitment. The original private financial agreement complicated matters. What has happened since makes the situation considerably different. Mason stared around the room, realizing his victory was slipping away. Megan reached for Ryan's hand. This time I'm choosing you without compensation. Ryan held her hand tightly. And I'm choosing you without an inheritance. Good, Megan said. Now stop giving away companies. He laughed through tears. Then he embraced her. There was no audience that mattered anymore, no clause to satisfy, no performance to maintain. Several months later, Megan and Ryan exchanged vows again in a small ceremony outside Atlanta. Sophie scattered flower petals with far more enthusiasm than accuracy. Carol cried in the front row. Helen cried beside her while pretending she had something in her eye. Jessica reminded everyone that she had predicted the entire ending, although nobody remembered her doing so. Megan continued working as a community consultant. She took evening classes and eventually helped create a division inside Russell Development focused on affordable housing designed around the actual needs of working families. Sophie finally stopped asking why married adults lived in separate homes. Megan, Sophie, Carol, and Ryan moved into one house, not an enormous mansion, but a warm place with enough rooms for privacy, a yard for Sophie, and a kitchen where Ryan continued loading the dishwasher incorrectly. Years later, Megan would sometimes think about the morning Ryan stopped her in a hallway and asked a question that should have made no sense. By then, the money that once seemed large enough to solve every problem had become almost irrelevant to the story. Carol's health stabilized. Sophie grew into a confident young woman. Megan earned qualifications she once believed belonged to people from different neighborhoods and different lives. Ryan remained at Russell Development, but the company changed with them. Housing projects began including childcare rooms, community spaces, accessible designs, and services suggested by residents rather than decided entirely in executive offices. One afternoon, Megan found Sophie's old drawing inside a frame in Ryan's office. The paper was faded. The house was crooked. The people had oversized heads and uneven arms. You still have this? Megan asked. Ryan looked offended. This is historically important. It looks like you have 3 fingers. I had not yet reached my final form. Megan laughed. Then she studied the drawing more carefully. A woman, a child, a man. 3 people holding hands before any of them understood what that picture would become. Megan had once believed life improved when a person finally became secure enough to stop being afraid. Growing older taught her something different. Security rarely arrived first. Most important decisions came while some fear remained. She had been afraid when she accepted Ryan's proposal because poverty had narrowed her choices. Later, when she finally had money, she discovered another fear waiting underneath, the fear of being loved and then abandoned. For years, she had survived by being cautious. Caution paid bills. Caution protected Sophie. Caution kept unreliable people at a distance. There was dignity in that. But there was also a point where caution stopped protecting and started imprisoning. That was the part nobody explained when people spoke casually about courage. Courage was not trusting everyone. Megan would never teach Sophie that. Some people lied. Some promises failed. Some opportunities really were traps. Experience mattered, questions mattered, and boundaries mattered. Yet wisdom also meant recognizing when evidence had changed. Ryan had entered her life for selfish reasons. Megan had entered his for practical ones. Neither beginning was noble enough to impress anyone. What mattered was what they chose afterward. Ryan could have treated Megan like an employee of his private arrangement. Instead, he respected her decisions. Megan could have accepted comfort and remained emotionally distant. Instead, she allowed herself to grow. They both made mistakes, withdrew when frightened, misunderstood each other, and said things too late. Love did not erase those failures. It survived because both eventually became willing to tell the truth. As Megan grew older, that became the lesson she valued most. A meaningful life was rarely built from perfect beginnings. Families formed after disappointments. Careers began after years spent doing something else. Friendships recovered after misunderstandings. People discovered talents long after deciding they had none. The past explained a person, but it did not have to finish the story for them. Megan also learned that dignity had nothing to do with income. She had possessed dignity while cleaning offices before sunrise, just as she possessed it later while sitting in planning meetings. Money changed her options. Education changed her opportunities. Neither created her worth. Ryan had needed to learn the opposite lesson. Wealth could buy freedom from many problems, but it could not buy the certainty that another person remained from love. They had met on opposite sides of privilege and discovered the same truth from different directions. What people remembered at the end was rarely the size of the account, the office, the inheritance, or the house. They remembered who sat beside them in hospital corridors, who listened when they were afraid, who encouraged them to become larger than the life circumstances had assigned them, who remained after there was nothing left to gain. Megan looked at the old drawing once more and understood why Ryan had kept it. Long before their marriage became real, a child had drawn the simplest version of what both adults were searching for. Not wealth, not rescue, not perfection. Just a place where no one had to face life alone.